So you feel like at this point you still don't know whether it was the EPA, the federal government, or was it the Giuliani administration that was negligent?
Well, I know it was the Giuliani administration because they have their own health czar. The firefighters didn't need to be told that the air was unsafe. I mean, we knew the air was unsafe, yet we still went to work every single day because in the first few weeks we were hoping to actually rescue people that may have been trapped. And then the recovery was so critically important so that we could bring back loved ones, not just the firefighters, but the thousands of civilians who perished in that terrible attack. They wanted to have the remains brought home. So those were things that we needed to do. We stepped up to the plate to do them. The administration had an obligation to provide protection. They didn't do it. And now we look back and say, Rudy Giuliani's running for mayor on his record on 9/11. His record really is pretty shabby.
Well, we'll get to that in just a moment. But what about the claim from the Giuliani administration that it was perhaps your members that didn't wear the masks, that there was this feeling of this macho attitude of, we're going to go in there, we're going to rescue our brothers, we don't need these masks? What do you say to that?
Well, it's ridiculous. I mean, in the first few days, it was clear that there was no mechanism to provide proper respiratory protection. And everyone knows that firefighters have masks. Those masks are designed for fighting fires in the interior of a structure. You only have about 20 minutes of air. Okay, so they're of no good, no use to us whatsoever down at ground zero. Throw them away. What do we have? Nothing. Now, when was the Giuliani administration going to provide firefighters who are working every day in this toxic stew something to protect themselves? And the answer was they never did. They virtually never did. They had an obligation to do it. They didn't do it. So for them to say that firefighters are macho guys, yes, they are. They were down there doing their job. They knew that the conditions were horrible, but they did it anyway. And they should be lauded for that. But the mayor has a responsibility to protect his city workers. He didn't do it. And now he wants to turn around and point a finger at us. It's ridiculous.
So at the end of the day, could this doom Giuliani's presidential aspirations?
Well, I hope it does. I mean, I hope it does for several reasons. In the end, here's a guy who on September 10th of 2001 had the worst poll numbers, was going out the door and would have been thought of as one of the worst mayors in New York City. And now, miraculously, because he put a dust mask on and walked blocks away from the World Trade Center with cameras following him. And the only reason he was on camera was because the OEM center that he built was in 7 World Trade Center and could not be used. So he built his command bunker where the 1993 attack took place. So they made a lot of mistakes. He's viewed by people outside of New York City as somehow the man who was in charge. In the end, it was firefighters and other first responders who actually did the heroic work, not Rudy Giuliani.
But is it really fair to call him one of the worst mayors, given that, first off, your union did endorse him when he was running for mayor? Also, you talk about the major crime reductions in this city. Certainly there have been other accomplishments. Is it fair to say that?
It is fair to say that everyone has pros and cons. And Mayor Giuliani will say, I'm sure, that he reduced crime dramatically. He also came in after the crack epidemic ended in the late 80s, early 90s. And he had a great police commissioner, who I think took a lot of credit for that. And what did Mayor Giuliani do? Fired him. So it's always been about him. But I think when you look at September 10th and where his polling numbers were and what New Yorkers thought of him, he wasn't very well thought of. So in 3 months, on the backs of New York City firefighters, who he did nothing to protect, who didn't have radios that worked, we had 121 firefighters die in the North Tower after the South Tower had collapsed. They didn't hear the signal to get out. They didn't hear the maydays to evacuate because we were using radios that 8 years earlier did not work. We told them that we needed new radios. He didn't get them. It's a disgrace.
So you are clearly not going to be supporting Rudy Giuliani this time around. Who then of the presidential candidates do you like, and what about Hillary Clinton?
Well, it's a long way from making an endorsement, but let's make it clear. The UFA will never support Rudy Giuliani for president. Absolutely never. As a matter of fact, we will work to make sure that he doesn't get a Republican nomination. And I don't believe he will. I think
what are you going to do to make sure that, we're
going to tell the story. We're going to tell the real story and not the myth that he has and his handlers have, sculpted this myth.
Are you going to take some of the union's money and possibly fund campaigns? Or
we're certainly in the process of doing things that we think are important to educate people around the country. So we're tired of hearing that Rudy was this great leader when we don't believe that to be true. And if there's a thorough review of his record, pre 9/11 and even post 9/11, I think he won't stand up to the light of day. And I think as people around the country get a sense of that. They'll look to other candidates. If they want to vote Republican, they'll look to other Republicans. If they want to vote Democrat, they'll look to other Democrats.